Hi, my name's Kate Raisin and I'm Director of UK Study Options. We're a UK-based business and we offer independent university and careers advice to students all over the world. And we know a lot about fee status, and this is a topic that particularly impacts expat parents who are living abroad. And we have quite a unique expertise in this area that we've been developing for around 13 years. We are trained on how to apply the rules of fee status in UK universities. And we are also ex-admissions officers. So we used to work in universities and make fee status decisions. So we have that inside knowledge about how those decisions are made. And I'm going to share some of that knowledge with you today. Fee status is quite a complex topic, so it does go a bit deeper than this. But to keep it nice and simple and short for you today, I'm just going to try and keep it to 15 minutes. So how does fee status work in the UK? Well, universities distinguish between home fee payers and overseas fee payers. And the reason they do this is because for every home student, the universities receive funding from the government, and that allows them to fix a flat fee for home student tuition. But the universities don't receive any funding from the government for overseas students, so they pass the full cost of that degree on to the overseas student. And that's why there is a big disparity in terms of what home students are paying in tuition and overseas students are paying. So as I said, home students pay a fixed fee, and this is for any course at any university. Now, it does slightly differ depending on which UK nation the student is applying to. So Welsh fees are slightly different to English fees, slightly different to Scottish fees. But to keep it simple today, generally speaking, home fees are around £9,250 per year. However, overseas fees do vary widely because the universities can set their own overseas fees. So overseas students might pay anywhere up to £58,000 per year. And this is highly dependent on what university they are studying at and what course they are applying to. So if you want to get the most accurate information about what overseas fees you might be charged, the best thing to do is go to the university websites, have a look at the courses you're interested in, and see what they are charging their overseas students. So students are fee status assessed at the point that they apply to university. And fee status assessment is really an internal administrative process that you may or may not be aware is happening on your application at the point that you apply. And it's primarily looking at the 3 years of your life prior to the start of university, but it might look back longer into your life as well. And this assessment is essentially deciding who is eligible for those home fee places, who is eligible for that public funding that is subsidising the home student. And the universities have a legal obligation to make this decision correctly and apply the correct fee status to every student. So what the universities might need to do is a bit of due diligence to make sure that they're getting this decision right. And therefore, they might engage with the student and ask them information about their background and ask for some documentation, evidence about their lives in order to make that decision. There are some rules to help the universities make this decision, and there is training available for how to apply those rules, training that we receive, and they are published online, so anybody can go and read the rules around fee status. They are published by a charity called UKISA, so you can go and have a look at those if you want, but there are some problems with these rules, as I'm going to explain on the next slide. So what the universities do is they are given the autonomy by the government, and they use their discretion to make the final judgment call on each student's fee status on a case-by-case basis. So fee status can also determine which admissions process that student might follow. If a student is classified as an overseas fee payer, they might then be subject to a particular admissions process that is for overseas students. And the final thing to note is that fee status also impacts the finance that is available to students students also apply to the student loans company if they want to get some funding available for their higher education. This is a separate application to the university application, and students will be, again, fee status assessed independently by the student loans company that they're applying to. So that is another part of the system where fee status will come into play in terms of how students fund their studies. So what is the problem with this system and how does it impact you? Well, there are a set of rules, as I said, but these are quite problematic. They are pretty complicated, quite long-winded, they are multi-layered, and they are also quite generic. And it's actually quite difficult for the universities to apply these rules to the myriad of different student backgrounds that they encounter during that admissions cycle. There are also different fee status rules in each of the 4 UK nations. So if a student is applying to Scottish universities, they'll be subject to Scottish fee status rules. If they're applying to English universities, they'll be subject to English fee status rules, and so on. Now, although the rules overlap quite significantly, there are nuances and differences. Therefore, a student who is applying to universities in different parts of the UK might have a different fee status in different parts of the UK. The rules were written a long time ago, and they were written for all sorts of different student groups. So they cover lots of different categories of students, but they weren't particularly designed with expats in mind, and they still aren't. So the rules don't particularly serve this student group very well. And this means that expat students tend to fall on the borderline of what constitutes a home fee payer and what constitutes an overseas fee payer. So they're in this kind of uncertain grey area, and that leads to expat students sometimes being classified as overseas fee payers, because it's actually, the rules aren't helping universities be certain about what that student's fee status is. So the rules are not perfect. The universities are allowed to use their autonomy and their discretion to make individual fee status decisions. And this leads to what is quite a subjective and interpretive decision. And this is particularly problematic for those borderline cases, like expat students, because they are often being interpreted as overseas fee payers, when in fact they could be interpreted as home fee payers. And also, because of the subjective nature of this system, it also leads to quite inconsistent decisions being made from different universities about an individual's fee status. So what is a really common scenario is that a student will apply to 5 universities in the UCAS application. They might get 2 home offers and 3 overseas offers. So they're applying to the same course, it's the same student, but there are different outcomes from different universities about what that fee status is. And this is because of the inherent subjectivity and the kind of flaw that is in the system. Different people are interpreting that student's case differently. And some universities and courses are stricter on fee status than others. And this is another nuance within the system. Universities that are particularly competitive, so those at the top of the ranking, they might be stricter on fee status. And what that means is more of those borderline cases, those expat students, will get classified as overseas fee payers at these universities. Also, Scottish universities tend to be stricter on fee status as well. They have slightly different rules that are a bit more defined, and that again means that these borderline cases are more likely to get overseas fee status at such universities. And also, courses that are popular or very competitive to get onto, or perhaps very costly for the universities to run, such as medicine, dentistry, veterinary, engineering, law, other sciences. These courses are also quite strict on the fee status policy, and again, might be classifying more of those borderline cases as overseas fee payers. Overseas students might also have higher entry requirements than their home counterparts. So even if you are a British citizen, if you are classified as an overseas fee payer, you might follow through an overseas admissions process, which is something that we see at some universities. So this might mean that you need to achieve a higher performance in your interview, if that's part of the admissions process. You might need to score more highly in admissions tests. You might need to have higher grades from the curriculum that you're studying in. So generally speaking, it's harder for you to get onto the course in the first place if you are classified as an overseas fee payer. And actually, some courses might even be capped of the number of overseas students that they allow on those courses, such as medicine or other healthcare related courses. And this means that there are less places available for the students who are classified as overseas. So it might be really extremely hard to get onto these courses purely based on the fee status that you're given. Additionally to all of this, the student loan, which, as I said, is a separate application, students will undergo another fee status assessment, means that, again, even if you are a British citizen, you may be rejected for a student loan. And therefore your opportunity to have your education funded will be closed to you. And this, again, is purely based on your fee status and whether you are perceived to meet that eligibility criteria. So because there is a real lack of understanding about fee status in general and how it impacts people, there are a lot of myths and misunderstandings circulating out there. So I just want to tackle some of these here and try and put some of these myths to bed. So the first one, you have to live in the UK to get home fees. Actually, this is not necessarily the case. Now, although if you live in the UK all of your life and you are a British citizen, yes, you will get home fees. It doesn't translate that if you don't live in the UK, you won't get home fees. There is provision in the rules for the opportunity for expats who are living outside the UK to still maintain their eligibility for home fees. So it is possible to live outside the UK and still get home status. So this is quite a nice myth that we get to bust. But yeah, if you are British, you'll get home fees. This is another myth that we hear circulating. Although lots of countries do operate like this, if you have a passport, you automatically get access to their home fees. We don't operate like that in the UK, unfortunately. Being British is just maybe one of the criteria that you need to meet, depending on the category of the rules that you fall into. So this alone won't get you home fees. There are other criteria you need to meet. If you have a home in the UK, you'll get home fees. This is not necessarily true either. Although if you have a home in the UK, that might be part of your case for home fees. It might strengthen your case for home fees, but in and of itself, it will not automatically get you home fees. Again, there are other things that you need to meet to maintain eligibility. We don't have to worry about fee status until the UCAS application. This is quite an unhelpful myth because a lot of families are really not thinking about university until those A-level years, quite understandably, you know, but actually it might be too late to be thinking about fee status at that point. If you remember from one of my earlier slides, fee status assessment is primarily looking at the 3 years of your lives prior to the start of university. So really you need to be thinking about fee status 3 years ahead of university, because it means then you can preserve your eligibility over those important 3 years and make sure you still get home fees. If you're thinking about it around the time that you're applying to university, you may have already lost your eligibility without realizing. And at that late stage, it's going to be very hard to get that eligibility back. So probably my biggest message to parents around the world is really think about your fee status very, very early, at least 3 years ahead. If you go to boarding school in the UK, you'll get home fees. This is not necessarily the case either. So lots of people think that if they send their kids to boarding school in the UK, it will be a kind of automatic pathway to home fees. This is not the case. There is a specific rule about this. And it's quite an unfortunate myth, because it might lead people to make uninformed decisions about their kids' education, when actually they might be better off remaining in the school where they currently are. They might be progressing there well, and they might be happier there. So it can be quite a negative impact on the family and on the student themselves if they are under this misassumption. So it's a myth that is quite necessary to bust in some cases. If you are thinking about boarding school at all in your child's future, you really need to do a bit of homework around how the rules perceive this, to make sure that regardless, you are still maintaining that eligibility. Student A got home fees, so student B will get home fees if they do the same thing in that fee status assessment. This is another really unhelpful myth. Lots of people within your expat community may have succeeded in getting home fees, and they perhaps think that they know how they did it, and they've kind of cracked the code, and they might kind of inform everybody else how they did it. But actually, although it seems like as expats you all have pretty similar lives, fee status assessment is looking at lots of things about your life. So it might look at your property back in the UK, if you have one, your family in the UK. It might be looking at your work scenario, your travel pattern over the years, your life where you reside now. All of this information goes into a fee status assessment to help universities make that decision. And actually, it seems like you have similar lives because you're all expats, but when you get under the surface, a lot of those details are very different from one family to another. And it's that will determine your fee status. So if something worked for one family, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will work for your family. We really feel that people need personal guidance on this to understand their individual fee status and their eligibility. So make sure that you take some of these claims of we got home fees so we know how to do it with a pinch of salt. So some quick tips for you. Your case is unique, as I've just explained, so you will need personal guidance of this if you think you're going to be affected by fee status. Really need to think about this nice and early. At least 3 years ahead of university is the ideal time. That will give you a major advantage in preserving your eligibility for home status, and will ideally save you a huge amount of money in tuition fees later on when you are able to achieve those home statuses. Part of this is maintaining something called ordinary residence. Now, this is a particular term that is used within the fee status rules. I can't go into detail about it here, but I can tell you where you can find out more information about ordinary residence. But essentially, it's about maintaining strong connections with the UK, having some sort of life back there despite living abroad. Part of that might be having a UK home and having a connection with a UK property, and making regular trips back to the UK and back to this property in terms of maintaining this ordinary residence. It might also be about keeping your absence, so where you are residing now is considered an absence, keeping that as temporary as possible, so that it doesn't look like you have made a permanent move away from the UK. And that might come in various different formats, depending on the family and the lifestyle that they have. And you need to gather lots of evidence, because universities will query you on your background, and they will expect you to produce documents on your eligibility to prove to them that you are a home fee payer. So have a think about what you have on paper to explain your lives, to show that you have this strong connection in the UK, to show that your absence is temporary, and gather those together, because you will need to send them to the universities. If you want us to give you a quick review of your fee status and give you some initial feedback, you can fill in our form online. So if you get your camera phone open and you hover it over the QR code, it will take you to that form, and on submission it will come straight through to us, and we can talk to you a little bit about what your fee status looks like at the moment. We've got loads of handy blogs on our website, so you can go and have a look at those. They cover a whole range of different topics relating to fee status, and you can learn a lot about it from there. We have lots of testimonials of families that we've worked with and schools that we work closely with. And we also have social media links on there as well. And we're always posting articles that are relevant to fee status. Or you can contact us directly at hello@ukstudyoptions.com. Thanks for listening.